How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today it's time to see some of my favourite vehicles that I think you guys will enjoy. They are not necessarily the best vehicles in the game, but they are really fun to play, and they are certainly very powerful. In fact, this one on screen is actually one of the best mediums in the game, and it is the TVP, and we'll start off with this vehicle since it is the tier 10 Czechoslovakian medium line, and of course both the tier 9 and tier 10, the tier 9 being the Skoda T50 and the TVP T5051, have these super fast auto loading tanks that are able to deal a ton of damage all in one go, and they also have the opportunity to relocate around the map. They are able to reposition, capture people off guard, and you can really deal a ton of damage. Carry super hard, and in fact was one of the tanks that I really did enjoy going for the third mark. It was not a grind whatsoever, and they also have fantastic view range to allow you to spot opponents, along with the fact that they have decent camo, and you can see here they look pretty cool as well. We've got the skin on this one. Of course, if you take them off it looks more like this, but with the skin it looks really cool. And the TVP T5051 is just an extraordinary tank, and you don't even need this one. You could even go as far as to just have the Skoda T50, which is the tier 9. It just gets one shot less, and basically same sort of stats as the TVP, slightly slower, but yeah, overall both vehicles being exceptional within the game, and I highly recommend everyone at least tries out the TVP at some point in World of Tanks console. But moving on, let's go to the next one. And the next one is of course another free vehicle, and although this one is also very powerful, it is the tier 7 American tank that you don't even have to buy, so no premium tanks in this video, which is probably beneficial for you guys. I didn't really want to include them since they're not available for everyone, and I wanted to show off some of the tanks that you can have a load of fun in, and you don't have to pay anything. So the T29, the tier 7 American Heavy, is very good in game, and in fact it was a tank that when I first started playing World of Tanks back probably 8-7 years ago, something like that, was when I was playing this thing predominantly, and since revisited it, just realised the power that this tank really has in the game. It has a brilliant turret capable of bouncing pretty much everything at its tier. It does have a cupola which can be penned, but it's quite hard to hit, it's quite hard to reliably deal damage to, and essentially you want to get this thing hold down, and when you do, people will just try and run, and that is what makes this thing very solid, along with the fact it gets a fantastic gun, able to hit loads of tanks' weak points really nicely because it has decent accuracy, albeit we haven't you know, fully kitted out the tank in that regard. When you do, yeah, the accuracy is just perfect, the damage is perfect, and when you consider that this is going to be so close to opponents, it's always nice. And it really does feel like a tank that is just made for every single new player to at least try, and it is a tank that I feel like every new player or anyone in the game will find enjoyable. I don't think anyone really hates this vehicle for sure. At least the vast majority of players who play World of Tanks will say that this is a fantastic vehicle indeed, and it's why I think everyone should at least try this one out and have a ton of fun whilst playing it, as well as the fact that the entire tech tree line leading up to this thing and then past it is really good as well. Things like the T32, the T1 Heavy, the M6, the you know, M103, very solid, and then the E5 being one of my favourite heavies at tier 10 as well. And yeah, I mean, just in general, the T29 is a brilliant tank, and there are even premium versions that are rivaling this tank as well in the Minuteman and things like that. So I highly recommend at least trying it out. It's free and it's low tier, so it doesn't take a lot of time to get to, and yeah, I'm sure everyone will enjoy this thing. And there'll be a video actually coming out on the T29 pretty soon where we had probably one of the best games I've ever had in a heavy tank at tier 7. In fact, probably was the best game that I've had. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that one, and it'll be coming soon, or if you're watching this in the future, it's probably already released. So yeah, maybe I'll link that in the description in the future. But either way, moving swiftly on, let's go to the next vehicle. And the next vehicle is probably one you don't expect to see, and it might not be the most competitive tank, but it is one I absolutely love within the game, even though it is supposedly quite slow and not really that flexible. This tank is the T28. It's the American tank destroyer that is very similar to the T95, of which this tank leads on to. But the T28, it has to be one of my favourite tanks at tier 8 for sure, because it just feels so powerful. People actually bounce off of you because the armour is actually very solid. It has cupolas which people can pen. It has a lower plate that can be penned, but it's very well angled, which makes it difficult for people to pen. And yeah, just overall the gun performance that this tank has. We haven't got a commander in it, but the damage per minute is, you know, in excess of 3,000, and as soon as we put a commander in this thing, you are looking at some ridiculous levels of DPM. And in fact, I will put a commander just to show you how good this thing is, because you can see 3,600 damage per minute, 0.31 accuracy, 5 degrees of gun depression, really good armor, pretty slow, 22 kilometers an hour top speed. But yeah, fantastic view range, fantastic still concealment, making this a bit of a stealthy boy, but also one that can push in, deal damage and bounce a ton of rounds in the process, which yeah, is really, really fun. And it doesn't need a whole lot of premium rounds since the penetration on the standard is really good. And if you do come up against tier 10s, you have ridiculous penetration for a tier 8 with 297mm, which means even E100s are kind of fearing playing up against this thing. At least if they sit out in front of you. Yeah, I mean, just in love with the T28, and I think everyone at least could learn a thing or two when playing this tank, and although it might not be for everyone, it is something you should try. And yeah, that's why it made it in this list. After all, they don't always have to be the most competitive, outrageous vehicles, but I wanted to show off that you don't always have to play meta tanks, and by meta I mean the kind of hold down heavies that are fast sort of meta. You can also play tanks like this and have similar to amazing results as well. And then of course it wouldn't be a video about some of the best, most fun tanks if we didn't stick the KV2 in here. The tier 6 Soviet heavy tank that is capable of dealing 700 damage with its AP rounds, and with its HE rounds with 86 pen, which can pen most tanks at the tier, 910 damage, meaning you can one-shot a ton of vehicles in this thing. And if you high roll, you can do upwards of 1,000 damage. Yeah, 1,000 damage with the tier 6. You can see how I like this vehicle, and it is one of the most iconic tanks in World of Tanks, and I think everyone knows pretty much about this tank at this point, and it's just one we had to introduce into this video. And I played a ton in it back when I first started playing World of Tanks. It was just a really enjoyable tank, and of course I should probably revisit it and try and 3-mark it, as I'm sure we could probably do it now, considering, you know, we've got a lot more experience of when I first started playing this tank. So either way, KV2 is stuck right in there. It has horrible accuracy, horrible aim time, pretty mediocre DPM, not awful for a heavy tank at tier 6, nothing special, but it's all about that big alpha and the big devastating rounds that can one-shot a lot of the opponents you come up against, because having one-shot capability at tier 10 was overpowered, so at least we can do it at tier 6 instead against the new players and people that don't even know how to play the game yet, which is always fun. Either way, that is the KV2, and I'm sure you will agree that this tank is really, really fun to play and a blast to give a go on World of Tanks. The next Soviet tank is then the Object 277, which I found to be really, really good. It's a combination of speed, mobility, being able to be quite flexible, having good alpha, having decent armor, and combining that with decent view range and just basically the most all-round heavy that I can play and play very well. Yeah, the 277 is just a all-round heavy that I think most players will find pretty decent. It is one that kind of more experienced players will find to be amazing, and yeah, it can just surely just devastate flanks. You can be really, really competitive in the 277 and at the same time bounce a load of rounds off of the upper plate since it has the boat shaped, and even the lower plate can be a bit bouncy. The turret is very good. The gun is going to hit back hard, and with the heat rounds that this tank gets with 340 pen, you can basically pen everything that you're fighting very easily as well, and combine that with okay accuracy, okay DPM. yeah, this tank just becomes a bit of a nightmare for opponents to face, and that is why I absolutely love it. I think everyone can learn once again how to play that medium heavy role, and it's a good introduction to if you're thinking about purchasing medium tanks or playing them a bit more and learning how to play them without technically having to play them with terrible armor like you would see with typical mediums. This is kind of my slow introduction from a heavy player into a medium player, and I think this tank line is a great way of learning that, and hopefully you guys can at least take away from this video that yeah, maybe this is a good one for you to start learning how to play mediums properly, since it has a lot of features of both heavies and mediums combined. The next tank hit me like a complete side shot, and it genuinely blew me off my feet because I was not expecting the WZ132, which is this tank, the tier 8 Chinese light tank, to be as good as it actually is. This thing feels like it is super quick, it has good alpha, it's got decent damage per minute considering the alpha damage etc compared to some of the other lights. It has decent view range, it has decent concealment, the top speed's okay, and it just has a little bit of bouncy armor as well. Nothing spectacular, you're going to get penned by most things, but you can bounce a few rounds here and there, and that's what I find very, very good about the WZ132, and what's even better is you can even get 2 tier 10s from this in both the medium and the light tanks coming off of this one, and I'd highly recommend going this way to the WZ120 and the you know, the 121 as opposed to going the actual medium way, because you'll find it just a little bit more painful playing the T34 variants that we have in the game, the T34-1 and stuff like that. So yeah, highly recommend this tank. Very good light tank. You will learn so much playing this tank line, and I think that yeah, a lot of people can benefit from playing it, and that's why I wanted to feature it, and it really did strike me completely out of the blue, and yeah, one of my favourite tier 8s is certainly light tanks. This is my go-to tier 8 light tank. It might not be the most competitive, but it is bloody good, and I think everyone should try it. The next tank I almost feel ashamed to even be showing, and that is the S35CA, which is what I like to call the bathtub, as you can probably see why. This tank is the tier 5 tank destroyer from the French line, and in fact I loved both this and the tier 6, so you could almost combine them together, and that is because these tanks have premium rounds that are, well, I mean, just flat out better. Why is that? Well, they get more damage, more penetration, and more speed, which makes them literally better in every single way. So if you are interested in playing a literal premium spam tank, then yeah, this is the one, because it feels ridiculously good. It has brilliant vision, it has really good concealment, and if you combine that together you can have some ridiculous games. And in fact you can find a gameplay on this channel where I managed to pick up a pools medal in the S35CA, and there's a reason why this tank on my account has I believe in the region of a 80% win rate or something ridiculous like that. I think we should be able to find it here. Yes, thank you Wargaming for having this terrible French icon in the way. Yeah, anyway, apparently we're not allowed to see the win rate, but I can guarantee it's in the region of between 75% and 85%, somewhere like that, which is, yeah, pretty broken. And if you combine that with the fact that you can platoon with people in things like the Panzer 5-4, yeah, this is a Seal Clubber's dream, and one of my most embarrassing tanks to have played to 3 marks, and maybe I could even go as far as to try and get the 100% on this thing, which I'm sure everyone would love to see. But either way, this tank very, very fun to play, and was surprising how good it really is, considering, you know, it doesn't look all too amazing. And yeah, it was a really, really nice one. In fact, most of these French TDs I really enjoyed, even though they are not particularly your most competitive ones. They're really, really fun, and I highly recommend playing the Foch 155 line from start to finish, and you'll have a ton of fun along the way. And yeah, you'll have some awful games, but if you do make them work and you play that more passive role, keeping at the back, using bushes and camo to work your own magic, yeah, they can be outstandingly good and some of my favourite tanks in the game that I highly recommend. Now this vehicle right here is the Panther 2, and it is one that you're probably thinking, why the hell are you showing a Panther 2? Well, I feel like this tank is actually really underrated. It gets 490 alpha, it gets actual armour that can bounce a few rounds. You know, I'm not saying it's going to bounce everything, by far it will get penned, but it can bounce a few rounds, and when you're travelling at 55 kilometers an hour in this thing, you can certainly bounce a lot more rounds than when you're stationary in something like a Ferdinand, I can guarantee it. And also, with the 490 alpha, coupled with the fact that you can move at that speed, allows you to mobilise into all sorts of positions. And when you're using this tank in the right way, it has really good DPM for the alpha damage at the tier, it has good accuracy. You can see even here with no equipment in this thing and without a commander, we've got 0.33 accuracy, 2600 DPM, view range not even maxed out or anything. I would recommend using your advanced loader, I would recommend using advanced optics and then running it with advanced concealment as well, so that you can then essentially use this tank, get into position, hide, deal damage and then mobilize again to somewhere else. And you can even ram in this thing since it does weigh a little bit. And so yeah, just a really fun tank. And I think, yeah, I mean, is it the most competitive tier 8 tank destroyer? No, probably not, but it can be very competitive if you know how to play these sorts of fast mobilizing tanks and ones that require you to position yourself quite well in the game. You can really have some fantastic games, and I think that's the reason I wanted to show it. And I mean, yeah, is it as good as the Borsig, which is next to it? I don't know, but it's close, I think, other than the fact that you don't get as much camo. But either way, really enjoyed playing the Panther 2 and of course the Panther 1. Yeah, just really fun tanks. And that then moves on into another German tank. And there is no surprise that the Tiger 2 ends up in this list. The combination of a fantastic gun, decent armour, and yeah, just a kick that this tank has. The good mobility, the good view range, the good health. Just when you combine it all into one, this tank is just so good. And it's the same with the E75, the tier higher. It gets more alpha, it gets decent armour, more armour than the Tiger 2. Still good view range, still decent speed, and yes, I mean, just really fun tanks to play in general. The Tiger 2 and the E75, ones I'd recommend every player to play, and yeah, just so much fun. I really do. I don't know, but I can't really say anything else. It literally is just perfect. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy them as much as I did. Then we have double trouble again. We've got the tier 6 Swedish tanks, and you might be thinking, why the hell is the KV2 on here? The KV65-2 is actually a tank that I was amazed how good this tank really is. I have had so many ridiculous damage games for a tier 6 in this tank because of the fact it gets really good penetration on its premium, good penetration on its standard, really nice alpha, really good DPM, really good concealment, really good vision range. I mean, you know, that it's just got everything really good. Amazing speed backwards. This tank is just perfect for someone that knows how to use camouflage, and when you do use camouflage, like, people just genuinely cannot spot this thing and they cannot do anything against you, and you can tear apart tier 8s even when you're using this thing, albeit you don't have the most health, so you do get taken out pretty quick if you do get spotted, so it's not as easy to play. It is one of the most rewarding tank destroyers I think I've played, and I really love this tank. And then similarly, the SDRV-74, which is the medium tank, has the same sort of kind of characteristics. It has good kind of view range, it's got decent mobility, 45, less than 60 on the IKV, but of course this gets a turret, it's a medium, it also gets ridiculous gun depression, 15 degrees, yeah, 15 degrees of gun depression. I mean, crazy. Either way, this tank just feels immensely good, and I mean the whole line really, other than the Leo, is just really good as well. So I think that people really underestimate both these tier 6, especially the IKV. and if you use them right you will have a blast, and they aren't exactly very difficult to get your hands on, being only tier 6s. So yeah, I highly recommend playing both of them, and hence why I actually went ahead and 3-marked the STRV-74. Before 4 marks came out, I probably would have gone for the 4th mark as well if I was interested, but yeah, we did stop at 95 since there wasn't any point in going to 100 at the time of playing. But yeah, maybe I'll go back and revisit some of these once we've completed all of the tech trees. But there you go, 2 extra tanks there from a tank line that people always underestimate in the Swedish ones. And talking about underestimating, the next tank is the Challenger. This is yet again another tank destroyer that people severely underrate. The Challenger has ridiculous DPM, it has good mobility, it has weird armor on the back of the turret, having more armor on the back than the front. I mean, works as intended. Yeah, good view range, good concealment, really rapid firing, which allows you to deal damage, but it also has pretty nice alpha, 280, which puts it up there at the tier 4, kind of consistent damage that you can deal, and you can rack up thousands of damage in this thing, and it just feels really nice to play, and I'd highly recommend, once again, playing this one. And then turning the dial all the way up to tier 10, we have the FV4202, which is the medium tank, or one of the medium tanks that comes from the Centurion 7/1, and this one is actually my favourite of the 2, even though we didn't 3-mark the FV yet, but we will go ahead and do it to complete all of our medium tanks in the British line getting 3 marks. So yeah, it's just the last tank in that line that I need to do, and of course we will do it. And this tank is just perfect for someone that's experienced, that knows how to use HESH, that knows how to use standard rounds, and doesn't need to worry about having to fire premium, since it doesn't get any premium penetration. It just gets more alpha, as the HESH rounds always do. But yeah, the FV4202, just a solid tank, very good armor for a medium, considering that it's such a steep angle on both the upper plate, and the lower plate is minuscule on this tank. It's very low profile compared to the Action X, which is the other tier 10, and the turret armor of the FV is very good as well. So it's just a combination of everything great with the British mediums and stuck into one tank. And so yeah, the FV, really fun one, and it's always good when you start loading those HESH rounds to start obliterating the enemy team. And there we go, that pretty much sums up a few tanks that I really enjoy playing. There are a ton more that I might do in a next part of this video that will come soon, and if you have any recommendations for tanks that you decide, maybe I'll do a video on the community's tanks that they like. So yeah, leave your comments in the comment section down below as to what tanks you enjoy as well, and hopefully we'll do another part coming soon. But if you did like this video, do please think about liking it, because it does take a while to record, and it would be massive help to me, and of course show this to some of the other players in the game so they can also have some fun playing in some of these tanks too. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. Don't forget to check out the How to Get Better at World of Tanks playlist that showcases loads of different ways, loads of different things that you can do in the game to improve if you're interested. And of course the Gameplay and Tank Reviews playlist, which looks at all of the sorts of tanks that we've probably featured in this review. In fact, I'm pretty sure we've looked at all of the tanks in this review slash guide video on some of the better tanks in the game and the fun tanks in that playlist, so you can go through and have a look at all sorts of vehicles. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day once again, and I'll see you in the next one hopefully. Goodbye.